It is important to note that high standards carry throughout generations, as ideals are passed down through the household and less so in school.
I think parents have a huge role in student learning. I think a lot of times by the time students get to high school, parents kind of have this attitude about like, okay, hands off, it's time to let them become adults and kind of take their learning into their own hands. But what we hope to see is that parents still have a really involved role in mostly, I think, encouraging their students. I think a lot of times students, especially ninth graders, get to high school and it's really hard. It might be the first challenge that they've had, and a lot of parents sometimes are inclined to just want to make a change so that it becomes easier for them, and maybe that's changing a class or a teacher or something like that. But what we would love to see, what we appreciate seeing oftentimes too, is that parents are just really cheerleaders and do a good job of encouraging their students to stick with it and be uncomfortable, because we know that that's when all the learning happens, is when they decide to stick with it and really persevere through something that's difficult.
Anything to say on that?
No, I mean, I agree completely, and I think, I think parents' role is to support their child and also not expect the school to do everything. And so, and I think we find, and not everybody, but when parents are actively involved and have structures and boundaries at home and are okay letting their child struggle and work hard and maybe fail a little bit, then that's, like Ms. Copeland said, when we see the most growth in students. Because really, if you're struggling, you're learning skills to like overcome and keep moving forward, and you learn a lot about yourself in the struggle.
Parents that are highly adept in their particular field of work might be more compelled to push their own children towards making correct decisions and striving for improvement, so that they too will be fruitful.
I think the parents have a huge role in student learning. If they support their student at home, encourage them to get to school on time, to do their homework, to be an active member of the class, I think parents do play a big role.
So, kind of the more obvious part, right? Just delivering that instruction, but also I think providing challenges. I think that it is easy when we know somebody, we know automatically what somebody knows. We know that what they've done in the class before that prepared them for the class they might be teaching now, and they seem to do a really easy job. I think the teacher's role is identifying who needs to be challenged and who needs the extra support to come up so that they're working to their potential. But teachers have such a dynamic role. We know that they do a lot more than just delivering material, that they're really an inspiration, and that same encouragement I think really comes from teachers. And they're also modeling professionalism, they model communication, they model all of those life skills that we hope students are learning, not just material, but you can get so much more out of algebra than just math, for instance.
With more positive reinforcement at the school level, starting with the teachers and not the children themselves, students will receive motivation from the top down, shortening the path in which their grit and struggle must carry them. An example would be Cultural Awareness Weeks, which PHS already participates in, and opportunities for non-English speakers to learn, such as with employed translators. This effect of familiarizing students with regarding people at school as more familial and foreign should increase the accessibility of students to public school requirements, minimizing the amount of non-graduates in the system.
And teachers have a big responsibility. If they can keep these students active in class, know which students need help, which students are fast learners, slower learners, if they need extra time or if they need extra materials. Teachers are very important in student learning.
I would say no. I'm sure we both agree. I think it's the students who struggle the most and are not doing well in their classes are students most likely to kind of try and hide and not ask for help or seek extra help. And I think, there's a couple of reasons I feel the reason why it is. One is it's hard when you get so behind to actually think that you can make up the work. So it's easier to keep procrastinating, and it's also scary to ask for help because it shows that you're vulnerable and you need extra assistance. So it's scary to put yourself out there and actually ask somebody for help, especially when everything keeps piling.
Yeah. And I think we just have a tendency to look at that as a weakness, that asking for help or admitting that you don't know something means that you must be weak in something, but we as counselors look at it definitely as the opposite, that that's a skill that can be built, that it's not something that's natural for everybody, and we know the students who do the best are the ones that have really developed that skill, and they're okay to say like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, I need some help, and then they go get it. So it's, definitely the opposite of that.
No, I think students that struggle the most are the ones that do not ask for assistance. And I believe it's because, partly because of embarrassment, partly because they don't want to admit that they need help.
Yeah, I would say definitely. If you are not wanting to be here and you don't care about what's going on in your classes, it's really hard to be successful. And there's probably a few people who are able to pull that off. But I think as counselors, if we look at things from kind of more of a social emotional side, if your attitude is, if you're struggling for some reason, like something's going on, or you're just not wanting to be here, then it's really hard to be present in your class, like present there to learn and to absorb the material and to interact with peers or the teacher. And so, there's definitely a correlation.
Positive student attitude and a helpful home environment equates directly to greater achievement socially and academically, and in turn establishes a greater connection to the subjects being taught, such as at Peninsula High School. According to Abraham Maslow, psychologist, in his hierarchy of needs, the basics of homeostasis in the student environment contribute to a greater chance for an individual to achieve a high self-esteem and reach a level of self-actualization and understanding of purpose.
I would say that there's a variety of factors as to why different students don't graduate. It's kind of easy to point to kind of obvious examples of, someone who just doesn't do homework and doesn't come to school, or, the kind of the stereotypical idea people have about who drops out. But we know that there are students who have really significant life events that take place, and not just during high school, but maybe it happened earlier in their life, and that means that they've kind of been in constant transition. And so those students oftentimes just have big hurdles that they have to cross in order to graduate. So that might mean that they don't have a stable place to live, or transportation to get to and from school, or even food. It's those really basic needs that aren't met for a lot of students. And so getting here and then being able to be here and feel safe to learn and do their best is really a challenge. So I don't know that there's ever any one factor. I think the students that don't graduate are facing obstacles in kind of all of those areas of their life. And sometimes I think there are other students who just choose a different pathway, in that they might not see the value of education right now. They might be more in a survival mode that requires them to go work so that they can have a place to live and kind of meet those basic needs for themselves. And so for right now, high school and a diploma, they just, they can't invest or see the value in that based on, those needs needing to be met, and spending their time differently.
There are some students that are simply unwilling to apply themselves in the classroom and may be nuisances, an interruption to the learning of others. However, this is not a flaw. It is a particular characteristic that is not to be judged in face value. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs, presidents, congressmen, and artists never attained a high school diploma or equivalency. School education is not a measure of a person's creativity or desire to discover, rather a tool to regulate the majority of the population in meeting modern standards to become more effective members of society. According to the United States Department of Education, in the 2013-2014 school year, high school graduation rates nationwide were an average of 81% graduation with diploma.
I believe some don't graduate because they don't have the support at home. Some probably don't graduate because they truly don't see the importance of an education. They think what they're learning is not valuable. They don't think they'll use it in the real world, and they want to just go out and work. Unfortunately, they find out later in life the education is very important.